November 24th, 1944. 7,000 meters above the Pacific. The sky is an obsidian dome streaked with faint ribbons of moonlight. From below, the waves look like molten metal, black, endless, indifferent. Inside the pressurized cabin of a Boeing B-29 Superfortress, named Dauntless Dora. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Morgan checks his oxygen flow and glances toward his co-pilot. The needles on the gauges tremble. The engines hum like an approaching storm. 4 Wright R-3350 duplex Cyclones, each the size of a small car, push 60 tons of steel and fuel through the thin air. "Tokyo ahead in 30 minutes, says the navigator, pencil tapping against the map clipped to his knee. Morgan doesn't reply. He's thinking about the distance behind them, 1,500 miles of open ocean. The longest overwater bombing run ever attempted. No fighters, no escorts. If they go down, no rescue. Just the Pacific. The intercom crackles. Tail gunner to pilot, contrails spotted. Looks like the others are still with us. Morgan peers out through the small side window. In the pale moonlight, he can see them, ghostly silver shapes strung across the sky in formation. Over 100 B-29s, each carrying nearly 7 tons of bombs. A flying city, an industrial miracle born from desperation and obsession. The weapon that would finally bring Japan to its knees. Below, Japan sleeps. In the coastal city of Choshi, a fisherman's wife wakes to the distant sound of engines. She thinks it's thunder, but the sound grows. A slow, rising vibration that seems to come from inside the earth itself. Dogs bark, windows rattle. The sky begins to glow faintly red. At the Imperial General Headquarters in Tokyo, Major General Toru Fukuda stands over a plotting table, staring at a trembling radar screen. The blips shouldn't be there. Not this far from the Marianas. Not at this altitude. "Impossible," one of the operators whispers. "Our reports said their bombers couldn't reach Honshu." Fukuda doesn't answer. He already knows what it means. They've come from the new American bases, Saipan, Tinian, Guam, islands Japan swore would never fall. Each one captured after months of slaughter, each one now turned into an airfield, a runway for the apocalypse. A young officer bursts in, breathless. "Sir, visual confirmation. Multiple contacts approaching Tokyo from the southeast." For a moment, no one speaks. Then Fukuda mutters, almost to himself. So, it begins. At 12:08 a.m., the first bombs fall. Incendiaries cascade through the night air, trailing silver light before disappearing into the maze of streets below. A heartbeat later, the city blooms in fire. The blast wave rolls through wooden houses, paper walls, and narrow alleys like a living thing. Entire districts vanish in minutes. From the cockpit of Dauntless Dora, Morgan watches the glow rise through the clouds. "That's Tokyo," the bombardier says softly. "We're hitting the heart." The radio picks up chatter, static, broken voices, disbelief. Target confirmed. This is for Pearl. Inside Tokyo, civilians stumble into the streets, shielding their faces from the heat. The air is thick with ash and smoke. Firefighters race through burning lanes, water hoses hissing uselessly. In the distance, temple bells clang in chaos. By dawn, the B-29s are gone, silhouettes fading into the horizon. But the shock remains. The Japanese commanders, engineers, and pilots who gather that morning know something fundamental has shifted. The empire is no longer untouchable. The sky itself has betrayed them, and the war, once fought far away, in jungles and oceans, has come home. The following morning, November 25th, 1944. Saipan. The B-29 crews stumble down from their planes, faces pale, uniforms soaked with sweat. The Pacific sun beats down on the Marpy Point airfield as mechanics swarm over the engines, checking for bullet holes, fuel leaks, cracks. Half the men haven't eaten in 12 hours. Some haven't spoken since takeoff. Captain Frank Mullen, flight engineer aboard Lucky Lady II, scribbles into his logbook. Mission duration, 14 hours, 45 minutes. Altitude, 30,000 feet. Enemy resistance, minimal. Psychological effect, catastrophic. He doesn't know how right he is. Across the hangars, technicians work in near silence around the hulking silver aircraft, 141 feet wide, gleaming like something from the future. The B-29 Superfortress wasn't just a bomber. It was a flying factory of war. Remote-controlled gun turrets, pressurized compartments, a computerized analog bomb sight, and engines that strained the limits of metallurgy itself. It was the costliest weapon of the war, more expensive than even the Manhattan Project. Each flight cost lives before it even took off. Lieutenant Colonel Morgan watches his crew laugh weakly beside the plane, the sound brittle and hollow. One of them jokes, "We just flew halfway across the damn world and back. Guess the Pacific's smaller than they told us." But he knows what they all feel. Disbelief. It wasn't supposed to be possible. Just a year ago, the U.S. Army Air Forces could barely reach the southern tip of the Japanese Empire. The Pacific's sheer scale had made Japan seem safe, too far for even the heaviest American bombers. And yet, here they were. Men who had stared at the heart of Tokyo from 10,000 meters up. Half a world away, in Tokyo, the Imperial Army Air Service convenes an emergency meeting. The atmosphere in the underground command room is suffocating. Maps of the home islands cover the walls, dotted with red markers that now feel meaningless. General Kawabe Torashiro, Deputy Chief of Staff, slams his fist on the table. "You said the Americans couldn't reach us. You said Saipan was too far. Explain it." A major bows, voice trembling. "Sir, the aircraft, it's beyond our known capabilities. Pressurized cabin, long-range tanks, high altitude. Our fighters can't climb that high, and our radar barely saw them coming. Then we build something that can." Kawabe snaps. But no one moves. The silence says what no one dares. Japan's industry is broken. Aluminum shortages, fuel shortages. Factories shattered by submarine blockades. The empire is already bleeding, and the Americans are only just beginning. Back on Saipan, General Curtis LeMay arrives on a transport plane. He steps out, cigar already lit, squinting against the sun. At 38, LeMay looks more like a steelworker than a general. Stocky, flat-faced, all edges and precision. He studies the bombers lined along the tarmac, and for a moment says nothing. Then, turning to his officers, he growls, "They made it there and back. Now we make it count." He's already thinking ahead. The high-altitude raids were accurate on paper, but the jet stream, unknown to most of his crews, scatters bombs like leaves. Precision doesn't matter when the wind turns Tokyo into a furnace. LeMay will change tactics soon. Lower altitudes, incendiaries, maximum destruction. But for now, the men are heroes, and the machine has proven itself. That night, as mechanics refuel dauntless Dora under floodlights, Morgan sits on a crate near the runway, listening to the ocean in the dark. He lights a cigarette and watches the horizon, the same direction they'd flown in 2 hours ago, now invisible beyond the black waves. "Do you think they saw us?" asks his navigator, joining him. Morgan exhales, smoke curling up into the humid air. "They didn't just see us," he says quietly. "They heard the future coming." And in Tokyo, as smoke still rises from the charred edges of the city, a young Japanese engineer named Kiyoshi Ogawa studies fragments of aluminum retrieved from the countryside, scraps of the new American bomber. He holds one up to the light, running a hand over its flawless rivets. "Pressurized," he murmurs. "Aluminum alloy, Type 75S, seamless welds, impossible." His superior leans over. Nothing is impossible anymore. The realization spreads like a virus through the halls of Japan's military and government. The enemy has found a way to bring the war home. And the Empire has no answer yet. June 15th, 1944. Before the bombers, before the fire, before Tokyo knew the sound of distant engines, the invasion of Saipan began. At dawn, the Pacific horizon was filled with ships. Over 500 vessels, carriers, battleships, transports, stretched from sea to sea, their silhouettes black against the rising sun. Aboard one of them, Private First Class Leonard Davis of the 2nd Marine Division clutched his rifle and tried not to vomit. The air smelled like diesel, salt, and fear. "3 divisions landing," the sergeant yelled over the roar of naval guns. "Once you hit the beach, move inland. Don't stop to look." And then the world became nothing but sound. The thunder of the Tennessee and California firing 14-inch shells, the hiss of landing craft sliding down into the surf, the scream of Japanese artillery from the jungle. The battle for Saipan had begun, and with it, the key to unlocking Japan's skies. For the Americans, Saipan was more than an island. It was a runway waiting to happen. Lying nearly 1,500 miles from Tokyo, it was the perfect base for the B-29 Superfortress, the only bomber capable of flying there and back. But first, it had to be taken. The Japanese defenders, 30,000 strong under Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito, had turned the island into a fortress. Every ridge, every cave, every sugarcane field was wired with machine guns and mortars. Behind them, Saipan's civilians, 20,000 Japanese colonists and native Chamorros, waited in terror, trapped between loyalty and survival. As the Marines hit the beach, the sea turned red. Private Davis stumbled through chest-deep surf, bullets snapping overhead. Men dropped beside him, rifles slipping from their hands. Ahead, the sand rose in plumes as mortars landed. "Move! Move!" someone shouted, but the air itself was on fire. When Davis reached the seawall, he collapsed beside a dead Marine and realized the body's hand was still clutching a rosary. For 3 weeks, the island was hell. The 27th Infantry Division joined the assault, inching forward yard by yard. Naval gunfire shattered the ridgelines. Flamethrowers turned caves into tombs. Japanese counterattacks came at night, desperate banzai charges that ended in slaughter. And yet, they kept coming. On July 7th, 1944, in one final doomed assault, General Saito ordered every man to die where he stood. "The fate of the Empire depends upon the defense of this island," he had declared. By dawn, over 4,000 Japanese soldiers lay dead, the largest banzai charge of the war. The next day, Saito committed seppuku in a cave near Mount Tapochau. When the guns finally fell silent, the Marines stared at what was left. Saipan was a ruin, cratered, burned, and littered with bodies. Thousands of civilians had jumped from the cliffs rather than surrender. The sea below the suicide cliffs still foamed red. But on the highest plateau, Army engineers were already marking the ground. Bulldozers roared where mortars had fallen. Runways began to take shape, long, silver scars carved into volcanic rock. Major General Haywood Hansell of the 20th Air Force arrived weeks later, stepping off a C-47 transport into the heat. He surveyed the island, the half-built control towers, the shimmering runways, and smiled grimly. "We can reach them from here," he said. "Every city, every factory, every harbor." It was the beginning of something Japan could not undo. By the fall, Saipan, Tinian, and Guam had become America's forward launch pads. Each day, Liberty ships unloaded crates of aviation fuel, stacks of bombs, replacement engines for the massive B-29 fleet. Airfields like North Field on Tinian grew into the largest in the world. 4 parallel runways, 8,500 feet long, housing nearly 300 bombers at once. At night, the island glowed under floodlights as crews prepared for missions. The air reeked of hot oil, cordite, and sweat. Mechanics worked sleeplessly under the wings of the Superfortresses, adjusting propellers, refitting turrets, and calculating the load ratios that could mean life or death over the Pacific. In Tokyo, the Imperial General Headquarters began receiving scattered reports. Enemy constructing massive air installations on Saipan and Tinian. Night flights detected over Iwo Jima region. Interception impossible beyond 600 miles. But few believed what those words meant. Until that night in November, when the sky over Tokyo turned to flame. Now, months later, after the first raids, Japanese commanders looked back at the loss of Saipan and understood. That was the moment the war had already been lost. Losing an island was one thing. Losing the illusion of safety was another. For every Japanese citizen looking up at the burning sky that winter, the message was unmistakable. The Americans had crossed the impossible distance. The empire's walls had fallen, not by invasion, but by air. And somewhere over the Black Ocean, a new kind of warfare had been born. One where a single plane could erase a city. March 9th, 1945, Tokyo. The night is cold, the sky low and windless. Somewhere over the dark Pacific, hundreds of B-29s roar north in staggered formation, no longer flying high and proud at 30,000 feet. Now they come in low under the clouds, less than 2 miles above the sea. General Curtis LeMay has ordered the change. Precision is dead. Fire is the new weapon. Inside the leading lady, Captain John C. McGowan wipes sweat from his brow, though the air is freezing. The smell of gasoline fills the pressurized cabin. They've stripped the bomber of its defensive guns, carrying only incendiaries. M69 firebombs filled with jellied gasoline and white phosphorus. "We're not dropping bombs tonight," McGowan mutters. "We're dropping hell." Beneath them, Japan sleeps again. But not for long. At 12:08 a.m., the first wave reaches Tokyo. From the cockpit, the city looks like a faint grid of dim yellow lights. Then the bombardier toggles the release. Clusters of firebombs tumble from the bays, thousands at once, trailing silver cords before bursting open midair. Each canister releases dozens of small bomblets, spinning, hissing, searching for rooftops. The first fires start in the eastern wards, Shitamachi, the wooden heart of the city. A neighborhood of paper homes and narrow alleys, factories and workshops, built of pine and dreams. The fire spreads faster than anyone imagined. The wind feeds it. The oxygen itself seems to ignite. At street level, the air becomes flame. Witnesses describe it like a wave, a red wall rolling through blocks at 70 miles an hour. The heat is unbearable. Men, Women, children run toward the river, carrying futons over their heads, only to find the water boiling. Mothers clutch infants. Priests ring temple bells that melt before the sound dies. Above the inferno, the B-29 crews see it all. An ocean of fire devouring a city of 10 million. Even through their sealed windows, they can feel the heat. McGowan whispers to his co-pilot, "My God, what have we done?" Radio chatter fills the cabin. Fire visible 70 miles out. Tokyo completely engulfed. Target erased. By dawn, 16 square miles of Tokyo are gone. Over 100,000 dead. It is the single deadliest night of the war. More than Hiroshima, more than Nagasaki. And it is only the beginning. At the Imperial Palace, Emperor Hirohito's advisors stand in stunned silence as reports arrive. Entire districts leveled. Civilians incinerated in shelters. No defense possible. The city that had been the symbol of the empire's divine endurance is now a smoking ruin. In the days that follow, Japan's Air Defense Command gathers what remains of its interceptors. Nakajima Ki-44s, Ki-84s, brave pilots flying machines held together by desperation. They climb, engines coughing, but the B-29s are too high, too fast, too many. For every bomber downed, 20 more arrive. For every fire extinguished, 100 more ignite. Tokyo's survivors move like ghosts among the ashes. A mother searches for her child in a sea of burned stones. A policeman stands beside a melted bicycle, his uniform charred to the color of soot. The Sumida River is choked with bodies, the water reflecting the red dawn like a mirror of blood. In Saipan, LeMay reads the after-action reports without flinching. "Results satisfactory," he writes. But in private, even he knows the cost. "If we lose," he once said to a subordinate, "we'll be tried as war criminals." He wasn't wrong. Back in Washington, the generals argue. Hansel had been replaced by LeMay for being too precise, too humane. The new doctrine is total war. Destroy Japan's will to fight. Burn its cities until there is nothing left to defend. Each island, each factory, each home becomes a target. By April, the raids expand: Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe. The B-29s fly almost daily now, their silver bellies glinting in the sun over a nation collapsing beneath them. In the shelters, civilians whisper the same phrase: Bakudan no ame, the rain of bombs. At night, the bombers return to Saipan and Tinian in silence. Pilots climb down from their planes and light cigarettes, eyes hollow. Some stare at their hands, blackened by the fire they created. Others drink until they forget. They know they are ending the war, but they also know what it takes to end it. In Tokyo, among the rubble, a young naval officer named Minoru Genda stands near what was once an aircraft factory. He'd been one of Japan's best strategists, a planner of Pearl Harbor. Now he watches workers sift through ruins for scrap metal. "They used to say the Pacific was our shield," a soldier beside him mutters. Genda shakes his head slowly. "The Pacific is theirs now. And the sky. The sky belongs to the Americans." Above them, the faint rumble of engines rolls once more across the horizon. The sound that every Japanese now knows by heart. The sound that means death is coming again. July 29th, 1945. Tinian Island, Mariana Chain. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the runway already shimmers with heat. Under floodlights, ground crews swarm around a row of parked superfortresses. Their silver skins glow faintly in the dark like sleeping giants. Inside the cockpit of Boxcar, Major Charles Sweeney flips through his mission checklist. unaware that in just days, this very aircraft will carry the most terrible weapon the world has ever known. But tonight, it's another routine fire raid. Osaka again. He glances out at the flight line. Hundreds of planes, their propellers still, waiting. The smell of fuel, sweat, and hot metal fills the air. The war feels close now, but also mechanical, inevitable. The island hums with the rhythm of a war machine too large to stop. In the operations tent, General LeMay leans over a map of Japan. Black grease pencil circles mark the cities already erased. He takes a drag from his cigar and exhales, tracing a line from Tokyo to Niigata. After this, he mutters, there won't be much left to burn. His aide hesitates. Sir, the reports say civilian morale is collapsing. LeMay doesn't look up. Good, he says flatly. That's the point. Outside, mechanics finish loading 500-pound incendiaries into the great artiste. They work fast. The tropical heat is punishing, and the crews will take off in less than an hour. Somewhere beyond the sea, Japan is already awake. Radar screens scanning for the sound they fear most. The low, rhythmic drone of the B-29s. In Tokyo, Air Defense Commander Lieutenant General Shigeru Fukudome knows the Americans will return tonight. He hasn't slept in days. The underground bunker smells of damp concrete and fatigue. Reports arrive every hour. Osaka burned. Nagoya destroyed. Our interceptor fuel reserves at 12%. He rubs his temples, staring at a crude chart showing bomber altitude versus interception success. The numbers don't make sense. His Ki-84s can barely reach the bomber's flight paths. Even when they do, the heavy machine guns on the Superfortresses, remotely operated by gunners staring into periscopic sights, cut them down like flies. A young officer enters with a trembling voice. Sir, if the Americans can strike every night, how long until they... Fukudome silences him with a glance. There's no answer that isn't despair. Back in the air, over the Pacific, the formation spreads into the dark. Inside Dauntless Dora, Morgan's crew flies again, eyes heavy, nerves frayed. The war has turned into repetition, takeoff, fly, drop, return. But tonight feels different. The clouds are low, the stars faint. The silence before the target is absolute. Then, over Japan, the blackness breaks. Below, faint sparks of anti-aircraft fire rise like distant lightning. The city comes into view. A patchwork of dim orange glows from the fires still smoldering from the last raid. Open bomb bay doors, Morgan orders. The switch clicks. The floor trembles as the hatches open to the void. Below them, the sound of sirens. Thin, mechanical, and hopeless. People run through the streets with buckets, with blankets, with prayers. A mother wraps her child in a futon and whispers, Koko wa daijobu. You're safe here, but there is no safe anymore. The sky itself is enemy territory. The bombardier sights the city through the Norden bomb sight, the same precision device once hailed as the future of warfare. But now it's irrelevant. Accuracy doesn't matter when you're burning everything. Bombs away. The plane jolts upward, lighter by tons of death. The bombs descend silently for 6 seconds, then the world below erupts. Fire climbs the sky. Morgan closes his eyes. No one speaks. When they return to Tinian, dawn is rising. The horizon is blood red, though the fires they left behind are 1,000 miles away. The men climb out of the planes in silence. One of the gunners vomits beside the landing strip. Another just sits, staring at his hands as if the smoke might still be on them. The mess hall radio crackles with news. Japan's emperor refuses surrender. Fighting continues on Okinawa. LeMay walks past them, cigar clenched tight. "Then we keep going," he says, "until they stop breathing." The men don't cheer, they just nod. Because what else is there to do? Weeks later, the news spreads across the base. A new weapon is coming. Something that will make even the firebombing look small. The details are classified, but rumors fly. One bomb, one city. Few believe it at first. The idea sounds like fantasy. And yet, in the shadow of Tinian's North Field, construction begins on a special pit. Engineers install massive steel cranes, hydraulic lifts, new security fencing. A crate arrives from the mainland under armed guard, labeled simply, "Top Secret, Project Alberta." No one knows it yet, but the B-29s that once carried fire will soon carry the sun. In Tokyo, as civilians dig through ashes, Emperor Hirohito's advisors meet again. One of them, Koichi Kido, speaks softly. "Your Majesty, our people cannot endure this much longer. The Americans are burning us alive." The Emperor nods, his face pale. He has seen the photographs, cities turned to black moonscapes, millions displaced. The empire that once stretched from Burma to the Aleutians is now a ruin. And the sky above, once the realm of gods and dragons, now belongs to the B-29. He whispers, almost to himself, "The sky has fallen." August 6th, 1945. Hiroshima, Japan. 8:15 a.m. The morning is bright and clear. A fisherman on the Otta River notices the stillness, no clouds, no planes, just the hum of cicadas. Children walk to school. Factory workers line up for roll call. In the sky above, 3 small aircraft approach from the southeast. Too few to trigger an air raid siren, the watchmen assume they're reconnaissance planes. They are wrong. At 31,000 feet, Colonel Paul Tibbets grips the controls of Enola Gay, the B-29 named after his mother. Behind him, in the bomb bay, hangs a single weapon, 11 feet long, 10,000 pounds heavy. Little boy. Inside it, 64 kilograms of enriched uranium, the culmination of science, fear, and revenge. "Bomb arm circuits on," the bombardier announces. Doors open. Tibbets glances at the clock. 8:15. He steadies the yoke. "Let's do it." The bomb drops cleanly. It falls for 43 seconds. Silent, invisible, unstoppable. Then the sun touches Earth. A flash brighter than anything ever seen fills the sky. In an instant, the city vanishes. The blast wave races outward at 1,000 feet per second. Wooden houses vaporize. Bridges melt. Human shadows burn into walls. A boy on a bicycle becomes a mark of ash. The river boils. Glass turns to sand. Within seconds, 70,000 souls are gone, erased by light. From 30,000 feet, the crew watches the rising mushroom cloud, a column of fire and smoke towering miles high. "My God," murmurs the co-pilot. "What have we done?" No one answers. The plane banks, turning for home, leaving the dead city behind. 3 days later, August 9th, Nagasaki. Rain falls softly over the hills as the second bomb, Fat Man, descends. It misses the city center by a mile, but still destroys everything in Urakami Valley. The blast vaporizes the cathedral, the schools, the neighborhoods below. 40,000 die instantly. Thousands more will follow in the weeks ahead. At 11:02 a.m., Japan's last illusion of invincibility ends. In Tokyo, Emperor Hirohito listens to reports of the destruction in silence. Scientists confirm what few can comprehend. Single bombs, delivered by a single plane, capable of annihilating entire cities. The generals plead for continued resistance. "We must defend the homeland," one shouts. "The Americans cannot land if we destroy their fleet." But the emperor knows it's finished. For years his empire had fought with sword, fire, and faith. But no faith can shield against the sky. The B-29 has become more than a machine. It is the messenger of a new age, one where distance, courage, and sacrifice no longer matter. Only power. August 15th, 1945. The nation kneels in front of radios. Hirohito's trembling voice, the first time his people have ever heard it, echoes through every home. The war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. We must endure the unendurable. In hangars across the Marianas, crews pause their work. Engines fall silent. For the first time in years, the Pacific wind carries no bombers. On Tinian, Morgan stands beside dauntless Dora, her silver skin dulled by salt and sun. Mechanics are already dismantling equipment, shipping crates back to the States. He runs a hand along the fuselage, the paint still streaked from the last mission. "It's over," someone says behind him. Morgan nods. "Yeah," he whispers, "but the world won't be the same." He looks toward the sky, the same sky that once felt infinite, now forever changed. Weeks later, in the ruins of Tokyo, a former engineer named Kiyoshi Ogawa, no relation to the kamikaze pilot of the same name, walks through the burned remains of his workshop. He finds a charred sliver of aluminum, curved, smooth, unmistakable, a fragment of a B-29. He turns it over in his hands, thinking of the night the sky burned, the roar that shook the city, the power that came from 500 miles away. "Machines," he murmurs. "They crossed the ocean. They crossed time." He looks up. The sky above Japan is quiet now, but it feels different, vaster, heavier. For centuries, the empire had seen the heavens as divine. Now it belongs to man, and man has learned how to destroy from afar. In the years that follow, the B-29 becomes a symbol, both of victory and of horror. The plane that carried the firestorms now carries supplies, then mail, then memory. Its descendants will cross oceans in hours, circle the globe, reach the stars. But its shadow never fades. Because the war ended not when men surrendered, but when the sky itself surrendered, when it ceased to be a boundary and became a weapon.